Welcome back, you guys. This is the Jake and Carissa show, where a teen mom and a combat Marine come together.
Hello, and welcome back. We're doing another episode here, and we've got our lovely Carissa Ferns. And today we are talking about how to love yourself after addiction. It's a very important topic to us. It's very near and dear to our hearts, and I'm sure if you've ever battled with any kind of addiction, you're going to definitely find some things here. So first, I want to kind of address that we're not going to go over too much about addiction, but more recovery from addiction. And so when we're talking about this, one of the things that we came across was loving yourself again. Again, that's the name of our website. And Carissa, what does love yourself mean to you?
Ooh.
Like when someone says love yourself, is it conceited? What is this?
I used to think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you would have asked me this, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, maybe 10, maybe longer, I used to make fun of people, right? I used to actually make fun of people that would brag about loving themselves. It used to make me so defensive and so insecure that I would have to, literally belittle people or put people down in order to feel superior or better about myself. So if that's happening to any of our listeners right now, I want to just, preface this whole episode on we completely understand that feeling. And if it's coming up for you right now, there is a reason. And that reason is not good or bad. We don't have to judge the reason at all. Just sit with it and keep an open mind, right? Keep an open mind. So today, what loving myself looks like is, I think if I can come up with 2 words, it would be radical acceptance. Like just radical acceptance for exactly where you are in life. And so like today I'm so relaxed that I feel tired, and I might be tired, but I slept a lot last night, but it's just radical acceptance for where you are, even if where you are is not where you desire to be. If you wish that you were further along in life, or if you wish that you had a certain skill set that you don't have, or you wish that you didn't have, maybe some behaviors. But it's really just understanding that this moment, the here and now, is really all we have. And we get to love and forgive ourselves for the past, while also understanding that we have choice. We have choice. We have autonomy. We have sovereignty. We have choice to do better if that's what we need to do. But the most effective, and you know this about me, honey, I'm a huge fan of efficiency. Like I would rather be wrong and someone enlightened me on a better way to do things than be right. And my fiance can literally account for that statement as truth. Like if there is, I'm just a big fan of efficiency. It's probably why I love psychedelics so much.
Yeah, if I have to say anything, I've never met anybody who's actually willing to look at their own shit and own it, even in the middle of an argument. We'll get into that another time, I'm sure. But your capacity to actually own your own shit is actually very. It's so surprising that it seems insincere sometimes when you're like, okay, and you're genuinely curious about that area that you need to learn about, or that hole, that hole that you need to plug. But I love that radical acceptance. So loving yourself is about radical acceptance. I absolutely love that. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's just, when I heard it for the first time, it was probably, or I don't know if it was I heard it for the first time or it sunk in. It was probably, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. It was early on in my sobriety this time around. And it was a therapist who said it. And I went, radical acceptance? Like radical? Like, so if I'm an asshole, like that's okay. And I'm just going to figure out ways to not be an asshole. Like just, you know what I mean? Like just radical acceptance. I don't know. It just opened up a lot of possibilities for me. It kind of made me feel safe in my own body of like, yeah, like this is me. The world has made me this way. There are things that I have been through. There is experiences, life experiences that I have had that have kind of shaped me into, and I don't mean like, I don't mean like from a blaming standpoint, like, oh, well, Earth made me this way and my parents made me this way and this is who I am. I don't mean it like that. I just mean like, oh, okay, like I no joke have a certain set of behaviors as a means to protect myself, a perceived means to protect myself. And if someone was to watch like a movie of my life from the time I was born to now, or really before I started to recover, my assholeness would make sense. And I say that about some of the politicians that we have, some of like people that are pretty horrible. And I always tell my students, and I've done this with even you, honey, where I'm like, yeah, that person is no bueno. But if we were to watch a movie of their life, it would probably make sense as to why they are the way they are. If they're mean, if they're narcissistic, if they're cheaters, it's like I remember hearing something one time and it was profound for me. It was whenever, and just a little bit of a trigger warning with what I'm going to say, it's a little intense, but when we see, and we don't watch the news, you guys, at all, but when people see a little 5-year-old, 6-year-old, even 2 or 3-year-old boy on the news that's been, molested or worse, when they go through these horrific things, everybody has so much compassion on that little boy. Like, can you believe what he went through and what he endured? And no little boy deserves that. Do we have that same compassion on the 25-year-old, 35-year-old rapist? No, no, because the ones engaging in those heinous crimes were once those abused little boys, you know? And so I always try to remember that, where it's like, okay, I'm looking at this big, strong man who's a fucking dick. But what I'm trying to see is the little boy that's inside that has made him the way he is today.
Yeah.
And so if we
Yeah.
can all do that, what that does is that gives these people who have committed heinous crimes, it gives them a chance, right? Because what do we want more than anything? We want people to stop doing heinous crimes. We want them to be rehabilitated. It's like we literally don't have enough rooms in the jail. Like we don't have actually enough room to keep them all in there. And so if we could look at it from a different perspective, and really the perspective is love, like it is love, I think there is a much better chance of love and forgiveness rehabilitating someone than consequence and punishment, which just isolates a person further, spreads more and more hate, spreads more shame. I don't know if anyone has ever changed for the better through shame.
Mm.
They might shift a little and then maintain a life, but they don't actually become happy or fulfilled or whole, like a whole and complete person that can emanate compassion, love, and forgiveness. No, you might not be harming people anymore, but now you're just still miserable. And from an energetic standpoint, from a quantum physics standpoint, that's it's not great for Earth. We want those high, high, high vibrations. Did I go off on a tangent for that
It
question,
was a really
as I
good
usually
tangent.
do?
It was a really good tangent.
Thank you.
Yeah. And obviously, a lot of this is going to be repeated in many different ways across many different topics as you stay tuned. For our listeners, as you are talking about radical acceptance, right? We're not saying that we need to accept bad behavior in others,
No.
right? But more that when we look at our own bad behavior, after we're done eating our shame sandwich, after we've gone down the shame spiral and whatever, and we've sat with those feelings a little bit, how do we get back up to love again, a love frequency, when we know some of the mistakes that we've made and we know some of the people that we've harmed and how we've harmed them and stuff? How do we How do we do that radical acceptance? Do we just get out of jail free card and just we feel sorry and so we get a get out of jail free card? How does that work?
Mm, man, it's such a great question. So there's two emotions that come to my mind: guilt and shame. Guilt and shame. Now, guilt, and in my opinion, through my studies, through my research, through my readings, guilt is, in my own ontological experience,
Mm-hmm.
guilt is a very effective emotion. You do something wrong, you harmed another person, verbally, physically, whatever it is. And if you feel guilty, that means you're a good person, right? That means you give a shit. That means
Mm.
that you're a good person. And it means you know you made a mistake. It means you know you owe an amends. It means you didn't like the behavior that you just exhibited and you want to change for the better. These are all great things. So sitting with guilt can be wildly effective. Guilt feelings are not threats, they are informants, right? Emotions are not threats, they are informants. They are
Mm.
telling us, they are informing us, they are communicating. Our emotions can't speak English, right? They communicate via a feeling. So you get an emotion, you feel guilty. Now you're getting a feeling in the body, in the earth suit, in our apparatus, interpreting that feeling of, oh, wow, I did not like what I just said to Avery. Huh. I didn't feel good. Okay. All right. I'm going to make this right. I'm going to do better. I'm going to go clear this up via conversation. That's effective, right? Guilt is wonderful. Now, shame is not an effective emotion. What shame does, guilt says, I have acted in a way I don't approve of, right? That's useful. Shame says, I don't approve of me. I am bad. It's like you're internalizing it as we are in that I am inherently flawed because I made a mistake. And so shame doesn't really serve us. It doesn't really serve us. Now, we could also like philosophically like depict that question too. Like, could shame ever serve us? Of course. I think shame served me when I was, an alcoholic living in a garage and lost custody of my daughter. The guilt wasn't working. So I needed to go that far down into shame. So of course shame can sometimes serve us, but as like as a regular means of living, an everyday means of living, no, we don't want to tap into that shame spiral, because then we're telling our subconscious mind that we aren't good, that we aren't bad, that we don't deserve forgiveness, that we don't deserve compassion. That is not effective, right? What is effective is a feeling of yuckiness, right? The feeling of guilt. Ooh, I tried that on. I don't like that. I'm gonna take that back. Hey, could we have another I didn't really like what I just said to you, and I'd like to take it back. I'd like to open up dialogue here and let me try again what I'm attempting to say. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for explaining some of the difference between guilt and shame, because a lot of times I know myself, I sometimes think of them as the same thing. So they are not the same thing, you're saying.
No, no,
Okay.
no, 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 no. And even if we look on the Hertz scale,
Mm-hmm.
the emotional Hertz scale, HERTZ.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, not for anybody who wants to look it up. On the Hertz scale, shame is the lowest. It's like one of the lowest emotions. It's super, super low. And guilt is much higher. Guilt is way higher. I think I can't even, I want to say like 5 or 6, but it's much higher because it is effective. It is effective. If
Mm-hmm.
let's say I don't work a 9 to 5 job. Let's say I show up late to my work, and instead of telling my work, I really didn't feel like rushing this morning. That's why I was late. Instead, let's say I say a white lie, and then you feel bad about that white lie. Well, that's good. That helps, because even white lies kind of get us into trouble, and it's coming from a place of inauthenticity. And so every time I feel guilt, I don't even judge myself. I'm just like, oh, okay, what did I say right there that didn't feel very good? So I just use it as a communication signal, just an indicator of like, oh, okay, body. Because I'll tell you guys this, God, the body, the human body, I study human potential. The human body is so fucking intelligent. So intelligent. Like, I'll give you an example. How the fuck does our heart beat? Totally on its own. How does it do that? Anybody know? Does anybody actually know? I mean,
Yeah.
doctors and stuff do. Our lungs. I'm sitting here talking to you. I don't even have to tell myself, okay, take another breath. Okay, breathe. It's been 3 seconds. We need more air. No, the body just naturally does that, just naturally fills its lungs with air, just naturally keeps our heart beating. We don't even have to command it to do. I get a scratch and it'll just heal on its own. That's incredible. The body is so incredible, but we spend half of our lives, if not the majority of our lives, in our head. In our head, letting the mind take over. And it's like, oh my goodness gracious, get out of the mind, get out of there. It's a scary place to be, and get into the body. Get into the body.
There's probably quite a few people that are listening right now that are driving, right? And so they are automatically doing processes, applying their blinker, changing lanes, doing whatever they're doing subconsciously.
Yeah.
On that note, you mentioned the heartbeat. The heartbeat happens completely subconsciously. Nobody ever thinks, okay, you wake up in the morning and go, okay, heart, you got to keep going for another however long. It just happens. But also on that note, and speaking of the mind, our thoughts operate much in the same way. Our thoughts are automatic. You don't say, okay, let me have a thought, and then it happens. Our thoughts are a constant barrage pretty much all day. So in that, I know you mentioned, sometimes when you notice, guilt or something like that come over you, you just look at it for a moment. So how do we separate ourselves from our thoughts, or should we separate ourselves from our thoughts? Should there be a buffer?
Yeah, I don't
I've
know.
heard you say that we are not our thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love this question, because I don't know if separation is the right word, because our thoughts are still a part of us. But just like you said, we are not our thoughts. We are the observer of our thoughts. If we were our thoughts, most of us would be incarcerated for killing someone. Like, how many times throughout your lifetime have you kind of wished somebody was dead?
How many times on a single drive do you
Like,
sometimes?
exactly, exactly. All of us. So if we were our thoughts, we would have massive consequences in our life. So that's the first thing to really recognize, of like, hey, I'm not my thoughts. I am the observer of my thoughts. And so then when you understand that, that is when you can start to tap into who you really are, which is first and foremost a soul, right? We are a soul having a human experience. And so when we understand that, we start to just allow our thoughts to pass us by like a movie. Like, wow, that is a crazy thought. Wow, that's a gnarly thought. Okay. Not gonna listen to that thought today. I like my freedom. And for me, when I first started becoming aware of my thoughts, and that I was not my thoughts, that was exactly 6 years ago. I found Dr. Joe Dispenza 6 years ago, and I started it almost made it a little bit worse before I got better. So for anybody who might just be stepping into this idea that you're not your thoughts, that you have autonomy over your thoughts, I don't want to tell you you will get worse before you get better, because that's not the truth.
Right.
I did because I had very, very sick thoughts. I chop it up to watching Law and Order SVU unit every single evening when I'm in a hypnotic state for almost 10 years. It was I had no idea I was doing that to myself. I had no idea.
Hold on. Okay. Keep going. Sorry.
No, I think that's good to bring attention to our listeners about that,
First of all, you said in a hypnotic state.
Correct.
What do you mean? That's right before bed. Explain that a little bit about this subconscious programming.
I'm glad you stopped me, honey, because I wanted to too. So 1 hour upon waking up and 1 hour upon going to sleep, we get into a hypnotic state of mind. And fuck, I wish we looked this up before we started the recording, or maybe real quick, use your phone if you have yours next to it. I forget what state the brain is in. I think it's theta. I can't remember if it's beta or theta, but the brain gets into a different awareness level, and it's in a very, very hypnotic state. And what that means is that it's very, very, very impressionable to suggestion. This is why people have listened to like no smoking tapes and stuff as they go to sleep at night. It's because they're rewiring their subconscious mind. So even though the human might not be aware consciously of what's happening, there is something happening to us subconsciously. And so subconsciously, I was watching, like, trigger warning, I was watching these women get raped. And I was watching these, like, just horrible, horrible things on television for 10 years because I loved Law and Order. I loved the twists and the turns and the legalities. And Marissa Hargitay, I used to love her. And then whoever Stabler was, I don't know, Chris something in real life, I just had the biggest crush on him. So I would watch this. I'd put my daughter down and do a little bit of studying, and then I'd watch Law and Order for no joke, like 10 years, and then be fucking baffled as to why I would wake up with anxiety. I would be baffled as to why I was scared to go outside at night. I'd be baffled as to why I would, like, make sure all my blinds were closed and nobody's looking in my house. Like, no joke. I had no idea that it was literally what I was choosing to put into my consciousness on a daily basis. This is why, and Jake already knows this, but this is why I have a very clean consciousness today. I do not watch violence. I do not watch somebody getting gutted on the fucking movie screen. I don't do any of that. I don't put any of that into my little beautiful consciousness anymore. Absolutely not. I know how powerful the mind is because I've studied it. And I'm like, ooh, I want my mind to manifest amazing things. I do not need those images. I do not need that subconscious reel playing over and over and over and over of what I don't want.
Mm.
So I became aware of that when I met Dr. Joe Dispenza, or not met him, but when I found Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's like, whoa, the mind is powerful. I'm just manifesting things that I don't want
Mm.
versus things that I do want.
Well, it is kind of like meeting somebody when you're reading their books and when you're starting to kind of get to know them, right? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, they may not know you're meeting them, but if they put their stuff out there, like we are with this podcast, you definitely start to feel like you're getting to know them.
Yeah.
And I think I looked it up. I believe it's theta. Theta
Theta.
is
Okay.
is
Is that what
those
I said? I
states.
think that's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah. And what level of importance would you say, as far as loving yourself again, right? What level of importance would you say it is on cleaning up that what you're feeding it regarding media, regarding television, regarding shows? Because you said that you were hyper vigilant about locking your doors. You were hyper vigilant
Oh
about
yeah, I
that. I
couldn't
mean,
even sleep alone. Yeah, it was crazy. It played into so many different addictions. So the question was, what level does that play into loving yourself?
well, I would say what level of importance? Like if a 10 is like absolutely you need to do this if you want to if you want to start showing yourself love and compassion and so on, or if you want to continue the growth toward spirituality or toward awareness or kind of cleaning up what your subconscious gets every day, would you say
10.
would you say somebody who meditates 10 minutes a day could offset a bad program at night?
No, I
Okay.
don't think so. And
Hmm.
here's why. So I would say it's up there with a 9 and a 10 because the mind, and you guys, I really want you to listen to this. This is not my opinion. This is fact. The mind does not know what is imagined and what is not. It does not know what's real and what isn't. It has no way of knowing. So when you are sitting there watching a war movie, essentially the reason why your heart's pounding in that scene is because your body is looking at it as you're in danger. This is not good. And granted, we are, especially here in America, we are very, very desensitized. And so if you've been watching these things since about 13, 14, 15, whenever you were allowed to watch horror and just bad things,
Hmm.
is how long you have been desensitized. And I'll tell you, when you remove that stuff, like those scenes kind of always bothered me. It always made me a little uncomfortable watching those things because I'm a highly sensitive person, but I didn't know it because I was always drinking wine or having a little something to, like, offset those big emotions that I have being an HSP. But now removing those things, making a conscious choice to remove junk from my consciousness. If I if I was to watch a horrific scene, I would be very, very bothered. It's happened on accident where something comes through, like my social media, or I'll be somewhere like remember
I've
how
I've
trigger What are you
I've
going to
tried
say?
to show you a movie, and all of a sudden, a thing came out of nowhere. Nothing said violence, nothing said
My
anything like
God.
that, and
What
all
was
of a
that with the
sudden,
horse not too long ago?
it's
That
the
was
movie
terrible.
Napoleon.
My God, that was terrible. Oh my God, it was horrible. My
Yeah,
God, I was so upset. I felt that. I felt the death of that horse, like that horse was mine. Now,
yeah.
granted, not everybody's like this, right? I'm an HSP, so it's only 20% of the population that's like me, where they feel
I'm
it real
sorry.
intensely.
Only 20%. 1 in 5. Only
Yeah,
20%.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I was actually going to remind you. Do you remember that time we were at sushi and the news was on? And
Mm.
you guys, I'm not rude to like waitresses. I'm not rude to anybody who does hard work. I've been a waitress before, and I was a terrible fucking waitress, and it was hard on my body. So I tip really well. I'm very sweet, very nice, lots of pleases, lots of thank you. And I didn't even really realize how rude I was, but I was like, can you fucking turn this off? Like, why would you guys have this on? Like, what? You
Yeah.
just put the news on and just like subject us to like what? And
It was like a somebody had been killed, and it was the fifth time I think that was on replay, and you were over
I
it.
was just like, why on earth are you putting on the fucking news in a sushi establishment?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, turn that on in the privacy of your own home. Don't subject people to watch what you want them to watch, especially if it's violent, especially if it's negative. You
Mm.
know, and what's so funny though to me is that I'm actually the unusual one. I'm the unusual one. Everybody else is cool with it. They're like, "Oh yeah, what's that going on there? What do I
Yeah.
need to be informed of?" Like, bitch, you don't need to be informed of shit. You're not going to do anything. You have zero control over this. It doesn't matter what's going on in other countries. The only time it ever fucking matters is if you can personally do something about it. If you have enough power to actually make a change, then fuck yes. Watch that shit, put it into your consciousness, deal with the repercussions, say your prayer, stay close to God, and then make a change for the better. And we will all thank you and we will all love you for it. And that's amazing. But if you can't do anything, you have zero power, then what is this excuse of like, well, I'm just staying informed. You are? You're staying informed for what?
Mm.
So you could what so this is dinner conversation, with your friends. So then you can all talk about negative stuff and then your children can overhear it. Like good? What good does that do anybody? It does zero good.
Mm. Yeah.
Let me take a breath.
Yeah. Well
Because
done.
I get so passionate. I'm just like,
Yeah, I
because
know that
it's
you get really fired up about the what people are feeding their subconscious mind, and it's really interesting because unbeknownst to me, before we met, I had actually started doing that, and it was from watching that movie, The Social Dilemma. And The Social Dilemma showed me that the algorithm on social media will actually continue to show you whatever you're looking for in order to keep you engaged on that particular app.
mhm,
So if you're searching for, let's say, fail videos on YouTube, then it will show you more fail videos on YouTube to keep you engaged. And it has little clever reminders to keep you engaged and so on. And so our little devices have become this voluntary thing where we actually are literally tuning in.
it's a slave device.
Yeah, we're tuning in to these different channels in order to get whatever frequency it's literally frequency and wavelength, and it's these channels that are being poured into our souls, into our subconscious. And so I know you feel very passionately about this, and I found out through Social Dilemma I can change the algorithm. I can make it work for
Yeah,
me. I can
yeah.
actually say, you know what, I'm going to stop following that. As a veteran, of course, I was like, yeah, I'm, watching a lot of the government stuff and world news and whatever. And I turned it off. That stuff that was getting me really riled up, I turned it off. I literally changed the channel. For
Mhm,
my veterans out there, when we used to realize that this particular bandwidth, people were basically too many people were tuned into that bandwidth, we would literally say roll freaks. We would say roll freaks, and you'd change the frequency and you'd tune into a different bandwidth. Well, you can
mm.
do that with our social media. You can actually do that with your
We can do that with our own
content.
consciousness.
Yeah, with your
Yeah.
own consciousness. You can literally decide what you're putting into it and what you're no longer putting into it, with music, with everything. So before I even met you, I was already changed my social media algorithm because I said, okay, I want to look for entrepreneurship. I want to look for positivity. I want to look for manhood, and I started looking for whatever I wanted it to feed me. And lo and behold, I started getting really good content. I started getting content that was uplifting, that was motivational, that started to talk about healing my soul, which after addiction, after military, after things, I had a lot of healing that I needed to do. And so one of those one of those steps was cleaning up my social media. And then when I, of course, met you and we started our relationship, you didn't want to watch anything violent, which holy hell,
You're
that
like, what do we
is
watch then?
a chore to remove violence
My God,
or
such a
V.
chore. Oh, no, 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 no. Like, no, this country has set us up to be conditioned and indoctrinated for sure. Like, it is everywhere, intentionally, intentionally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
definitely a means to control population. And so I think that's also why I get so fired up about it. Cause I'm like, you guys are forgetting your own autonomy. You guys are forgetting, and it's not even that they're forgetting. A lot of people don't know the power of the mind. They've got no idea because their mind normally works against them. And so when you start to study these things of like, holy shit, I'm powerful. I'm so powerful that my bones heal themselves, my wounds heal themselves. I can actually manifest things faster, quicker, living in a world where I believe that those things are possible, not living in the world where I'm scared of everything. And well, what if this happens? And well, yeah, that's one possibility. But I mean, also the earth can freeze over tomorrow. It's happened before. And so
yeah.
it's such a different way of living
Well, yeah, and we're going to be more afraid of things if we're constantly feeding it into our subconscious. We're going to be
constantly.
afraid of breaking and entering it happening in our own home if we are constantly watching crime shows.
Right.
We're going to
Because
be
those
afraid of
images are being
violence.
spit out to you. Like now I still might have like those like, well, what if thoughts? But instead of the what if thoughts, because those are just human, they're not bombarded. Now it's like I have that thought, but now it's not bombarded with picture images of what I saw on the TV last night or what I
So
saw on
that's
my phone on the news this morning.
reinforced even, right?
Yeah.
That's being reinforced. So then you
Yeah.
have that thing and then it's reinforced and
Hmm.
validated and revalidated and so on to
And
pretty
we
much
know
you're like,
from,
the whole world's dying and everybody's dying and everybody's
yeah.
killing each other and I'm only safe in my home in my little
Hmm.
bubble and so on. And lo and behold, what do they say in rehab and so on? They say the opposite of addiction is connection,
Yeah.
right? And so
Remember that?
therefore the more isolated we become, the closer to addiction we become. And
And the
so
more
getting
easier
out
we
there and
are
getting
to
connected,
control.
the easier we are to control. That is
Yeah.
correct.
Hmm.
Subjugation.
And like
Um,
we know now through neuroplasticity, right? This is what therapists are doing when you go to therapy and a very good therapist. When you start to talk things through, your brain is picturing, we think in images, most of us do. And so when you're constantly viewing these images, you're growing the new neural wiring in your mind of it actually being reality. And so then that like, well, what if someone breaks in my house? Like I've had the thought of like, well, what if someone breaks in my house? But it goes right away. It's like, well, maybe anyone could do that. We have free will here on earth, you know?
yeah.
But now it's not like covered with a picture that I saw from Law and Order last night or a picture of the news from this morning. It's just kind of like, yeah, that's one possibility. And then boom, I'm on to the next thought. 10 years ago, it was like a real legitimate concern of mine. I told you I used to take glass out of I used to take all the glassware out of my kitchen and I used to put them in front of the front door. So if an intruder came in, they would step on the glass, which is odd that I wouldn't think that they would just be wearing shoes, right? Like, how is this going to protect you? That literally is what the mind does. We do crazy, crazy shit. But I
Hmm.
also think it was the sound. Like I would hear the glasses, and so then I could get up. But man, cleaning up my consciousness took a lot of those fears away, and it gave me the ability to calm myself and the ability to cope because I started to realize how yes, those things can happen, but the likelihood is very, very rare. It doesn't feel like the likelihood is rare when you just saw a 10-minute image of it happening to someone on TV. The mind doesn't know that that's not real. The mind doesn't know. The mind is just like, hey, dude, we saw some gnarly fucking shit yesterday. You better be careful. Remember what
Yep.
happened yesterday? Remember that? So then you think that you're like recovering from a trauma, but you actually weren't even in a trauma. You were just watching a movie for entertainment.
Mm.
No, the mind is so powerful.
So you mentioned before, not in this episode, but you mentioned before that the brain um, prunes, the brain
Hmm.
prunes its neural network every 90 days.
90 days.
Every 90 days. So this, we did say, loving ourselves after addiction. So every 90 days, my brain is pruning and so on, right? And so that's where that consistency comes in,
Hmm.
right? Like, so if I can clean up my consciousness for 90 days, then I will start to feel the benefits of that.
Significantly. Yeah, it's going to start to be significantly easier. And it's interesting that we find that people, places, and institutions already know these things. They just don't know why they know these things. For example, in AA, honey, did you hear about do 90 and 90?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do 90 meetings in 90 days. Did you ever
Mm-hmm.
stop to ask anybody, hey, why 90? Why not do 30 and 30? Why not 60 and 60? Why not 120 and 120? Like why 99? Why the 90? It's because it's one of those things that we just kind of know is effective, but don't know the research behind it. So me, with
Mm.
my curious mind, I've been curious ever since I came out of the womb. Actually, I was probably curious in the womb, right? I was probably asking questions and all sorts
And
of things.
what is literally your cat's name?
Curious.
There you go. Okay.
Curious the cat. So yeah, so fuck, now I forgot the question. What was the okay.
No, I prompted you by saying that the brain snips every 90 days, right?
Oh
And
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
you mentioned 90 and 90 with AA, right? And
Yeah.
honestly, it's not in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous to do 90 meetings in 90 days. That's not in the book. It's it's actually in just kind of talked about and people suggest it.
Yeah, yeah. But it's just interesting as like humanity kind of already knows these things. They just don't know why. But the science behind it, I'm really into science, right? I'm really into kind of I don't want to say proof because there's so many things that I don't have proof in that I believe in, but I like
Yeah.
science. So
Well, because
with the
science is
brain.
constantly disproving itself on purpose.
Well, yeah, and even something, like science also said like flight couldn't happen. So even though
Yeah.
I like science, it does not mean that science is always right. Science legitimately said humans will never fly. That flying is for the birds. We're never going to fly, and here we are. We could take a plane anywhere today. Both my brothers are pilots. So just because it's science doesn't mean shit. But it's still kind of cool when it proves something to you and then also disproves something because it just allows room for growth and room for like we're humans and we live in a multiverse. We actually don't live in a universe. We live in a multiverse and anything is possible. And for someone like me, I like that. But yeah, so the brain does a scanning and a pruning. So first it scans, right? Wait, hold on. Let me do that right. Can you see that?
Yeah, that's right.
Get my ring. So first it scans and it'll kind of hone in like, oh, is Carissa saying she needs alcohol? She hasn't really said she needs alcohol. That's weird. Well, we no longer need this neural pathway. It's kind of like a road that's no longer being used. You can go ahead and just like let that road go and you go on the newer roads, the more effective roads, to drive on the safer roads. And so that is why they say 90 and 90. So if you can get yourself to 90 days, and that's the hard part. That's why so many people give up. We see this with weight loss. We see this with drinking. We see
Mm.
this with so many things is that it is very challenging the first 90 days, but man, once you get there, the brain automatically will snip a neural wiring that is not being used. But that's the trick is you actually have to stop using that neural pathway. And the way you stop using that neural pathway is to create new pathways. So if you had a neural pathway that was, I don't deserve forgiveness, I don't deserve forgiveness, and you're in that shame spiral, see, this is why shame is not effective, then it's going to be really hard for the brain to snip that neural pathway. But if you do something like plant medicine and you realize that although you have made horrendous mistakes, there was a reason why those mistakes were made, and you can make a choice to learn from them and to do better and to not repeat them. And then a little bit of love starts coming back into the body. Some forgiveness starts coming back into the body. And then your brain is now thinking, wait a second, I do deserve forgiveness? Okay. Oh, okay. So now that's literally, boom, that's a new neural pathway. Even if it's just being curious. This is why they say willingness is so important. Just be willing. Are you willing to believe that you're wrong? Are you willing to believe that maybe you're wrong and you do deserve forgiveness? Are
Mm,
you willing to believe that maybe you are wrong and you do deserve love?
mm,
You know,
yeah.
just that alone is a
Are
new
you
neural
willing to
pathway.
even open the idea? Absolutely. Just had another blip in the computer. I'm not sure who was talking there,
I
you
am
or
too.
me. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I didn't know if we got paused or.
The 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 people that are listening, people like you and me who have done some things, right? Done some things that we're not proud of. I know that when I went to rehab, I had a very awesome person there. I don't know if she was awesome or it was just that I was in an awesome state of not giving a fuck because my life was in shambles, and I was the person that put my life in shambles. And when I went there, it was really interesting because I sat down with a therapist, and for the first time in my life, I was like, I'm just going to be completely honest with this person, just completely honest. For the first time in my entire life, I'm
Just
going
see what
to
happens.
just see what
See
happens,
what
right?
honesty can do for a human.
I don't I was at that point where I no longer cared. I literally was suicidal before I went to rehab. And so like a couple days later I'm in rehab and not and just like, fine, what do I have to lose? What do I have to lose? I almost killed myself over this bullshit. So what do I have to lose? And it was really interesting because as she asked me questions, I started answering honestly, right? And she's like, Jake, you got to show yourself grace. And I kept saying, Marva, that's for those other people. And she's like, no, you have to show yourself grace. And I'm like, Marva, that's not for me. And she's like, you're going to have to find some grace and some compassion. You've got to show yourself this. And it was, and it was really, really hard to hear. It was hard to hear as she would tell me about it. I mean, the defensiveness was up. My walls were up. I was like, I'm not going to listen to this because I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve it. So why am I even going to start? Right. I was so low in that shame spiral. I was so low in that frequency. I was not vibing high. I had plenty in my life to like be proud of, but for some reason I was all the way down, all the way down. For people who have done things that they're not proud of, learning to love yourself when you know for sure that you're a shithead, when you know for sure that you've done things that you wished you had never done. Um, you have got to stay with it. Stay with it a little bit longer. Have the willingness, as we talked about, have the willingness to investigate what happens if I start to forgive myself. What happens if I allow myself the opportunity to investigate whether or not I can recover from this? And we're
I'm
back. We had a
back.
little bit of technical
I don't know where I went.
difficulties there.
Went to the
Um,
Matrix.
yeah, we had some technical difficulties, but let's get back to it. Talking about when I went to rehab, I 100% was finally willing to be completely
Mm,
honest with my therapist, with my people there, because they were complete strangers. I don't have to pretend. I'm
yeah.
never going to see them again. I did not care. Now, this was not my first time in counseling. This was not my first time in therapy, but I finally decided to be honest. And it was really wild how quickly I started making changes. And my therapist would frequently kind of start laughing. She's like, holy cow, I've never had anybody with this level of honesty. And I'm like, Marva, maybe you don't know, but a couple days ago, I had like a freaking gun to my head.
All
So
right.
what else do
I
I
have
have
nothing
to
to lose.
lose? And it was divine. It was a divine message that if that was, if that was an option, if suicide was an option, then all other options are on the table, including radically changing, doing the 180, right? And so I've had hours and hours and hours and multiple therapists. I've had veteran therapists. I've had civilian therapists. I've had different people. And it's wild how willing I was to show up and bullshit somebody for an hour. Like, what the fuck? What a
Yeah,
waste
the
of
ego's
time.
wild. Ego's wild. Ego wastes a lot of time.
It was what a waste of time of theirs
Yeah.
and mine. And my mom's in mental health. I know for a fact I mean, what do they think? They're like, oh, this person's wasting my time too. Like, okay, well, I'll sit here for the hour while they're just pretending for the entire hour. It's weird. And so when I took off my masks and I took off everything else and I finally was honest with her and started talking about some of these things, and she says, man, you need to show yourself grace. And I'm like, yeah, you don't know who you're talking to. And she's like, well, regardless of what you've done, you need to show yourself grace. And I still thought she was full of shit. And I left the rehab and everything, and I heard it. I couldn't unhear it. It wasn't the first time I've heard it, but I couldn't unhear it. But I was unable to even consider showing myself grace for such a long time after that. At 6 months, I was still crying. At 6 months, I was still feeling like I had ruined my life and I had ruined my daughter's life. And I was pretty convinced that I'm only ever going to ever be able to ask life for like the bare minimum, like because of who I am and what I've done, I don't really deserve anything positive. I don't deserve happiness. I don't really deserve love. I don't really deserve a relationship. I didn't really deserve so many things according to me, according to my own brain.
Right.
It was such a wild experience.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say, because I know the story that you're talking about with Marva. And, for anybody listening right now that can resonate with what Jake is saying, and myself too, I didn't think I deserved forgiveness. I think the best way to kind of overcome that is to recognize. So let's say you are at a place in your life and you just feel like you have created so much wreckage that you don't deserve forgiveness. If you are there, I'll tell you why you deserve forgiveness and why this works. It's actually not about you, right? So if you don't think you deserve forgiveness, what about others? What about humanity? What about the people that are closest to you? If you can't forgive yourself for you yet, use the people that are closest to you. If you don't have anyone close to you, if you've lost everybody in your life, I have been there. I lost everybody but my daughter. And actually I even lost her, at least emotionally, right? She was pretty pissed off at me when she was 15 and I was still drinking and wreaking havoc. I didn't think I deserved forgiveness, but I knew that if I wasn't open to forgiving myself, I was only going to make the planet worse. I was only going to make my daughter worse. I was only going to make my grandparents feel worse, about themselves. And so I kind of had to remove myself from it because I couldn't use myself. I was like, well, I don't think I deserve forgiveness. Okay, so then let's remove you. Do you think your child thinks you deserve forgiveness? Probably. Do you think your grandparents think you deserve forgiveness? Probably. Do you think your parents think you deserve forgiveness? Probably. Do you think God, do you think the fucking creator thinks you deserve forgiveness? Probably. And again, insert whatever spiritual pronoun. Like I don't even argue with people about God. Like that's not even something I'm gonna do. So you can enter Jesus, Allah, Buddha, what the fuck ever works for you is fine. But the creator of all of this. And that kind of helped me, right? Because it was like, well, I don't think I deserve forgiveness, but I know that I'm going to stop creating wreckage on humanity, on society, on my town. I've been to jail 3 times and a psych ward twice. So for me, it was very important to start healing because I didn't want to hurt people anymore, whether that was physically or verbally. And so even though I couldn't really get to a state of I deserve forgiveness, I was able to go, well, shit, if I don't consider forgiving myself, if I don't consider the fact that I should stop punishing myself, I'm only going to get worse. And if I get worse, it's going to be bad. Like if I get worse, people are going to be in pain. If I get worse, it's going to hurt others,
Mm.
not just me. And that really helped me. That was like, wait a second. So I should forgive myself so others feel better? It seems kind of counterintuitive. Seems like it doesn't make any sense, but that might be the stepping stone. That might be the bridge that you need in order for it to become about you. Once I did start getting a little bit better, then I did start to believe, oh my God, I do deserve forgiveness. My God, I can be a really amazing person. So if you don't believe in that right in the beginning, use us. Use Jake and I. We think that you deserve forgiveness no matter
Yeah,
what you've done.
it's really interesting how you really phrase that, right? Because you basically said that because when my therapist was talking about that, showing myself grace. First of all, are you saying like showing yourself grace and forgiving yourself? Those I feel like those are two different things because
Yeah.
I don't think I would if somebody said you got to forgive yourself. I mean, that was such a
You would have ran for the
long
hills.
road
Yeah.
ahead. That's such a big mountain to climb for me from where I was to forgiving myself. I mean, forget about it. That's a trip I can't even start taking. But showing myself grace was kind of the beginning to that. And then, like we talked about willingness, that's also there. So, does somebody need to start off? You just said they don't need to forgive themselves for themselves because sometimes we don't think we're worthy, but we can actually start forgiving
You can use
ourselves for other
others.
people.
Correct. You can use others because it's not very often that a person, does commit suicide or, leaves this planet and there's other humans that don't care, right? That's very rare. That's very rare. It's usually there are people that always care. You just don't know that they care anymore, but they do care. And so that concept of like, well, if you can't show yourself grace, if you have an inability to show yourself grace because you have built up a narrative that you just don't deserve grace for all the horrific things that you've done, okay, but I promise you, like if you're on the planet, that you have a mother and a father out there somewhere. Most people have friends. I mean, there was a time, it's also so rare that you're like an evil child, right? And so a lot of the times even have like childhood friends that care about you. Like there are people that care. There are times in your life where you have done good and changed somebody else's life for the better. And so there's people out there that care. So you can kind of draw upon those experiences to go, well, if I give myself grace now, does that mean I'll be a better human next year? Probably. Or, or if I just keep beating myself up and keep, eating this shame sandwich and just staying this shame spiral, am I more susceptible to doing bad shit? Am I more susceptible to engaging in crime again or drinking again or acting out again or lashing out again? Probably. So then like what's the point? Then you just keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And that's not good for you. It's not good for the people you love. It's not good for planet Earth. It's legitimately not good for society. It's legitimately not good for humanity. So you can kind of remove yourself like, okay, you don't deserve forgiveness. Cool. Got it. I hear you. I validate everything you say. Now let's get out of your ego and let's think about others for a second. If you could practice forgiveness, if you can practice grace for others, ultimately just within that act, you're going to start giving a shit about yourself because now you created like a little bit of pride. Now you're like, and good pride, like, oh, I forgave myself and I actually feel a little better and I want to do something nice now for someone. Like that's good for humanity. That's good. That's good for evolution. That's good for other humans. That act, is good. It's like even in the Bible. And I'm not even saying like I'm religious by no means. Ask Jake. I'm largely spiritual, but I'm not religious. But I grew up religious. There's a story about this man Saul, and Saul was evil. Saul raped women. Saul killed women and children. He was just this evil, evil, evil human. And he met Jesus. And Jesus said, well, I love you. Like, I love you unconditionally just because you're a human and you're here. And I don't know what happened to you when you were a little boy that has turned you into this person. But that's not who you are at your core, because no human is that at their core. They're just not. We're not. We're not built that way. And he changed his name to Paul. And then he became one of Jesus's. I can't remember if he became one of his disciples, the 12 disciples, or if he was just a follower of Christ. But after that, he dedicated his life to just doing good acts. Now, what a story, right? All of these other, men that might have been out there hurting women or hurting children, they get to meet this Paul and they're like, wait a second, you did horrific, terrible things and you forgave yourself and now you're doing good. What are the chances of creating a better world by punishment and isolation, or rehabilitating through love and forgiveness and compassion? What do you think is going to work? What's going to be more effective, right? It goes back to that word of, efficiency. I believe that love, compassion, and forgiveness are more efficient, right? Because I punished myself from the age of 6 years old. Six was when I became aware that I was, you know, inherently flawed. Not true, but that was the story I told myself. And I punished myself up until the age of 32. Up until
Mm.
the age of 32. I talked shit to myself. I was mean to myself. I beat myself up for all these horrible things I'd done, even though some of those things were literally just taught to me by people. So it's not my fault. Like, I was just repeating what I saw. Not that I'm not trying to take responsibility, but you know what I mean. And then it was 32 years old, I did my first mushroom ceremony, and my body was filled with massive love, and I was shown that the reason I do these things are not because I'm inherently flawed. It's literally because I was just like mirror neurons. I was taught these things. And so I started to forgive myself. Well, here I am, 38. So I beat myself up for almost 2 decades. Wasn't effective. Was not effective. I got worse. People I loved got worse. I hurt my grandparents. I hurt my daughter. I wasn't kind at the gas station, just filling up gas. Wasn't kind to like waitresses. Like, that's spreading toxicity. That's spreading evil. That's spreading yuckiness. In just 6 years, the volume of humans that I've helped because I chose to forgive myself and choose compassion and choose forgiveness has now bled into so many other humans. So many other humans. So that's kind of why I had to look at it from more of like an efficiency standpoint, right? Like, okay, so is beating myself up efficient? Is this going to work for humanity and myself? Is this going to work for myself and others? Or is love and forgiveness going to work? And I tried it. Love and forgiveness is 1,000 times more effective for Mother Earth. And I have always loved Mother Earth. I've never been one of those people to like litter or leave cigarette butts on her. Like, I've always had an appreciation for Mother Earth.
You've said something a long time ago to me, I think, that is about something along the lines of you wouldn't talk to your best friend that way, or would you allow
Mm-hmm.
someone to talk to your child that way, or something like that. Do you remember what you said?
Yeah,
You're
I
like,
say this often to my students, where they'll tell me something bad that they did, or a mistake that they made, or a behavior. Again, these are behaviors. We're not our thoughts, we're not our behaviors. They'll tell me about a behavior that they did, and they want to punish themselves because it's kind of human. It's human nature, because that's like what happens in childhood. You do something wrong that your parents told you not to do, and now there's a consequence, and we tell our
mhm.
children we have to have a consequence when you make mistake, right? Because that's really effective. It's going to prevent the child from doing it again. No. And so it's like they want to beat themselves up, and so I stop them. I always stop them, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. If the roles were reversed, and I'm coming to you, and I'm telling you, I was just really fucking mean to Jake. I was just so mean to Jake. I can't believe I spoke to him like that. And, I'm such a fucking piece of shit. I don't even deserve Jake's love. I shouldn't even be in this relationship. I should leave. I should leave before, I hurt him more. Right? They like go on and on about this. And I'm like, hold on. What would you say to me And they're like, well, I would tell you that you probably need rest, or you're a little bit overwhelmed, or maybe you need to engage in self-care and then go make amends to him, right? So they totally know how to treat themselves when you compare it to like how you would treat others, how you would talk to that coach that you love, how you would talk to your child. If your child did something really fucking stupid, which they're supposed to do, they're children, they're learning. Would you tell your child, you are a piece of shit? You're going to amount to nothing. I can't believe you made this mistake. There are some parents that do that, but the majority of us tell our children, no, you made a mistake and you're going to learn from this. And what's the lesson in all of this? And how can we do better? So then when we start communicating to ourselves like that, we are a lot less likely to engage in that shitty behavior again because we don't like how it feels. You don't like hurting yourself. You don't like hurting others, but we're more likely to do it again when we're sitting there talking shit to ourselves and being mean to ourselves and beating ourselves up, because then we're staying in that energetic vibration, that low level vibration.
Absolutely. Is there a benefit to talking shit to yourself?
I don't think so. Well, I guess that's not true. I mean,
So I
as,
think that
as,
there is a portion of our personality, right? That a little bit of that talking shit to ourselves is what gets us like moving in the right direction, or what makes us ambitious or something like
that,
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 right? Like a little bit.
that was kind of where I was going to go with that, where I'm like, well, so is it a good habit to create? No, absolutely not. But there's a purpose in everything, right? There is a purpose in evil, there is a purpose in bad, there's a purpose in everything in the universe. There just is. It's the yin and the yang. So is there a purpose in it? The purpose might be that's the catalyst to get you to change. That is the gift of desperation. That is what keeps you from pulling the trigger and going, wait a second, I don't want to die, I want to change. So could there be purpose in it? Yes, absolutely, there's purpose in pain. I just don't think as a habitual way of living, it's effective for you or for those around you, for humanity, and for Mother Earth herself. No.
Yeah. One of I did an exercise in rehab, and it's one of the things another thing where I realized that I was an emotional toddler, and I was like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing in this world, and I'm in a 40-year-old body. And it was, they, if, if you want to build self-esteem, then you should do esteemable acts. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, copy that. All right. So I wrote at the top of my piece of paper, I said, unselfish acts. And then I started to write unselfish acts. And I think I got to three. And I was stumped. And I was like, my God, I might be a little self-centered here. I can't even think of unselfish acts. And we started this whole discussion about like, well, I mean, if it's
Yeah,
to
but
make myself feel better, then isn't it selfish? And I'm like, no, I don't think that's what we're talking about here. But uh,
and see, we're literally like, I don't even really know who you were back then, but I can already think of like 5 things on the top of my mind that proves that you weren't fucking selfish, just from your story. Getting up, going to work, construction every day for 3 years when you didn't want to, doing it so that your ex-wife could have surgery. you know, all the things that you used to do for Avery, for Christina. Like, I can already think of like all these things that were very, very, very unselfish, very unselfish. So we are our own worst critic. We are
right,
the meanest to ourselves.
right. And I think that's where I was going is like it's really easy to put yourself in a shame spiral. It's really easy to
Mm-hmm.
start to talk so negatively to yourself. But would you talk to a stranger that way?
Right.
No. Would you talk? I mean, maybe some people would, but would you talk to a stranger that way? No. Would you talk to your children that way? Would you talk to your spouse that way? Would you talk to your friend
Right.
that way? No, no, no. But for some reason, sometimes our own worst enemy is right there in our head. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're out there and you're experiencing some issues with learning to love yourself again after you've made some mistakes, just so you know you're not alone. Everyone's made mistakes. Everyone has done things that they're not proud of.
Mm-hmm.
Find some things that you've done that you're proud of. Find some things that you have done. This is an exercise. Write down, take a piece of paper and write down some things that you're proud of. And if you can't think of anything that you're proud of,
Go
ask
do
some
something.
friends.
Or go do
Ask some
something that you're
friends.
proud of.
Or go do something that you're proud
Yeah.
of and start
Yeah.
holding the door open for somebody. Or you told me a
Yeah.
great thing that you and Michaela used to do where you used
That's
to
where I was going.
go, go.
Did you say go?
Yeah, go.
Yeah. So were you talking about what Michaela and I used to do around Christmas?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's what popped in my head. So you can start small. Let's say your life is in shambles and you don't even have a lot of money. Take $5 and go buy somebody something at the gas station. Go to the gas station and someone who's there to buy some Starburst or whatever, junk, not good stuff they're putting in their body. Just go, hey, excuse me, could I purchase this? Could I purchase this for you? Would you mind? Or leave $5 in Target somewhere. Like start volunteering now to start, making yourself feel better. I always really liked that thing in AA where they said do some esteemable acts. You want to get self-esteem, do some esteemable acts. I always really liked that. I was like, that's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
Go being kind now. Do you know how? So I make it a point, and Jake can account for this. I try to give compliments to women wherever I go. Wherever I go, whether it's her eyes or her hair or her outfit or her shoes or her nails, like, oh, I like your nails. Just little things here and there that makes a person feel good. That makes a person feel good. Start there. Start small. It's so
Absolutely.
easy. If let's say you don't even like to go out of your house, fine, get online and start spreading love. You know what I mean? Like it's really not challenging to be kind. I'm not saying go be nice and be a people pleaser. Be kind. Do something kind.
Yeah, that's a great episode. If you can imagine a balance, right, which is the old scales, right, where if you have more in this, then it weighs down here, and if you have more in this, then it weighs down here. Um, yeah, if you've done a lot of shit in your addiction and in your
Hmm.
when you're out there running and gunning, then yeah, you got a lot that you haven't been proud of. But if you start putting a little drop in there and putting a little drop in there and putting a little drop in there, then pretty soon those balances start to level out. And pretty soon you start to go, I've actually done more good than I have bad in your life. You can do it. It does
Yeah,
take some perseverance,
absolutely.
and don't forget that every 90 days you're reestablishing those neural networks.
Yep.
You're pruning, you're getting rid of those old
And
thought
it doesn't
habits.
even take 90 days to feel better. You start feeling better immediately.
Hmm.
Immediately.
Yeah.
And maybe in some of these episodes we can even go into a little bit more detail about the bad things that we have done.
Yeah.
That way you guys can really get a really, because I know what's going on in so many people's heads right now. They're like, well, yeah, I'm sure you guys have done bad stuff, but I've done worse. Right?
Mm.
Because that's like the human condition. We always try to compare. I did that with everyone in AA, where I'm like, yeah, but you haven't done what I've done. You have
Yep.
not been as fucking crazy as I have been. There's no way I'm telling you all my secrets because if I told you, you would agree that I don't deserve forgiveness. Right?
Yep.
I told myself that so often. So I feel confident that I can actually share the some of the horrible things that I've done just to give our listeners a really good idea of what it is like to practice loving and forgiving yourself after bad shit. And we'll get into that.
Spoiler alert, that's actually your ego. Your ego is saying, I've
Mm-hmm.
done these bad things and therefore I don't deserve forgiveness. Spoiler
Mm-hmm.
alert.
Yeah.
Once again, we thank you for tuning in. We're going to wrap it up
Yeah.
here. We
This
obviously
has
have
been
so much more
great.
to get into. And if you thank you very much for spending your time with us.
Yeah. Thank you
We do want
guys
to,
and we love you.
that's it. Wanted to say, if nobody has told you yet today, we love you. You are worth everything. You are worth it. You're an amazing human being. And I know that because you're alive, right?
Yeah.
Uh, thank you all very much for tuning in. And we'll be
Yeah.
with you next time.
See you guys
Okay.
next time. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Bye.